back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
How does he get these?
You like that?
Yeah.
All right, Dwayne's picking the songs as our intro to the Law Show here, talking about immigration law. And joining us in studio, Gordon Maynard and Rudy Kischer from MKS in downtown Vancouver. And they're immigration lawyers with many years of experience, and we're sort of stick handling the new express entry, sort of not what's going to be coming, but it's kind of a working paper, I guess. This is a trial balloon, as they call it in government, right? And see what changes are going to be coming. And one is impact of siblings. So in this working document, I guess they're saying that if you have a brother or sister that lives in Canada, you might get extra points for that.
Yeah, it's not a foreign concept. We've seen it. It already exists under the foreign skilled worker program, where you have to actually apply under that point-based system that Gordon was talking about earlier. You get so many points for your education, so many points for your English bill. You already get points if you have a sibling in Canada, right? So you're already getting some points.
Or almost any relative under the federal skilled worker program.
Cousin. So you get points for that to get into the pool. What they're saying is they're going to give you now more. These people aren't coming out of the pool in enough numbers. And you can imagine that from a government standpoint, who's going to complain the most, right? I'm trying to get my brother here. I'm trying to get my sister here. Those are the people that are going to be going saying, this system isn't working. I should be. My brother's educated. He speaks English. Why can't I get him to immigrate here?
One of those was this story of the young boy, the Syrian refugee who drowned in the Mediterranean last year. And it was a sibling who was living here in Vancouver, couldn't get their, I think it was brother, and the father of this young boy. That was front page of every newspaper around the world, of the little boy who drowned. It was the father's sister lived in Vancouver, couldn't get her brother here.
Yeah, now the issue there is it's two very different categories, right?
Okay.
So as an individual in Canada, you can sponsor a refugee, somebody who's got fears for their life. You can sponsor in a group of 5, showing that you'll support that person. She had made that application, is my understanding, but it wasn't processed fast enough, so it was processing slowly, right? So it's a totally different category.
Okay, I just see as optics it helps. When you're saying we're like, as you mentioned, who's going to complain the loudest? It's somebody who's here who can't get their brother or sister.
Yeah, and we saw a program that opened up much wider the sort of family sponsorship category in the early 90s. Under Mulroney did that, and they shut it quickly.
That was the family reunification?
Exactly, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
A sister relative you're talking about?
No, there was a category. They opened up that family class that was beyond sort of just your wife, to be beyond your spouse and your parents and grandparents, and it was open to a wider class. And then we also had an assisted relative class that you got a larger amount of, if you needed somebody in your business that was in a trusted position, for example, handling the cash and locking up, you could also add that person. That person had a high likelihood of actually qualifying to immigrate. So they've removed that, and I think this is what we're seeing coming back. My question is, I don't think the government, one of the points they see in their paper is it's more likely that somebody has family here is actually going to stay, right?
Right.
So, but I haven't seen the stats on what's the concern of immigrants coming and leaving, right? And are those stats really justifying that if these people have a sibling, are they actually going to stay? And I don't know if are we mixing apples and oranges? If we're saying this is an economic category, then shouldn't we just look at the economic outcomes as opposed to looking at it as a family?
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'd have the same take on that. First of all, these are people who are going to be in the pool anyway, so they're going to be already qualified in terms of entering either as federal skilled workers or CEC or FST. Now that they're in the pool, they're saying, we'll give you some points if you have a sibling. We'll help you get pulled out of the pool. And I find it interesting that they refer to siblings only. They don't say siblings, parents, children. They just say siblings only. Yeah. And I'm guessing, and it's purely a guess because I don't understand why it's here yet, it's purely a guess that they have some economic numbers on how having a sibling in Canada affects your performance down the road.
Or it could be age. So if you are if say you're 40 years old, your sibling is going to be roughly within 10 years of your age, right? Mm-hmm. So that might be it, right? It's an age thing.
I don't know. It's interesting. I'd like to know what drove that and why they think that's going to be a big...
I hate to be sarcastic, but I think it's a votes thing. I think it's clearly Canadian, they're going to have to try and sell it economically and come up with a reason. But I mean, it's the history is there. People that you let in tend to vote for you. And if they're seeing people in their riding saying, I want to try and get my sister in, it doesn't matter. They're going to look for the economic reason to try and justify it, whether it's a strong one or not.
If it was purely votes, then I think they would have included parents.
Well, they've already got a class for parents and grandparents.
No, but if you have a parent in Canada, you might be an overage dependent. You can't use the parent to come here for the family class. Yet if you have a parent here, it would help you in the pool. They're not saying that. They're saying it has to be a sibling, and I find that interesting.
Okay, now what about getting extra points for speaking French, or is it a ability to come in easier?
Well, you get certain points already in the system if you speak a second official language.
Mm-hmm.
What they're talking about is people they haven't said it here specifically, but there is already a work permit program that allows people if they have a job offer where they're going to use French, that they don't, and it's outside of Quebec, right? And their mother tongue is French, not whether they speak French, but if their mother tongue is French, that they are then allowed to get a work permit without having to go through this onerous process that we talked before called the labor market impact assessment, right? So they already have that avenue. This is continuing on this sort of idea that we want to help minority French-speaking communities throughout the country to grow, right? And because they're shrinking, right? And so this
Those
goes
are places
to
like Manitoba, New Brunswick, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, you don't see many in BC, but the program's available in the state.
Sure.
We've had clients that have qualified under the program in BC. So that's what it's aimed at, and to get extra points that those people are willing to move there. I don't know if that is an indicator. Like, are we mixing apples and orange again? Is there an indicator? We're already giving lots of points, right, for if you speak the second official language. Now we're going to give you, extra points if you're going to a Francophone community. How are you going to enforce that?
Yeah.
How are you going to track that? How are you going to know it's even going to happen?
Well, that leads into the whole issue we had come out with this 15% land transfer tax about people coming into Canada through the Quebec program but not staying in Quebec. So to your point, Rudy, if you are saying to French-speaking people, you're going to get extra points if you land in a French community, well, all of these people, not all of them, but 95%, to your point, are not staying in Quebec. They're coming to British Columbia.
Yeah, that's a well-known stat.
Well, sorry, the Francophone program that they reinstituted this year doesn't require you to speak French for the job, and it doesn't require you to go to a Francophone community. When you can go to an English-speaking community, you can be an English-speaking job, but if you're French-speaking,
no,
that's your,
we just the requirement specifically they state is you have to use French in the job, right? It says that in the requirement.
I know there's a couple of documents out there, and they're inconsistent. Yeah. We just processed one the other day.
But that doesn't mean that's not the requirement. You're supposed to go to you're going to be involved in the Francophone community, and there has to be one where you're going. If you're saying there's none, and you have to be speaking French in your job. That's what the requirement says.
So I'll let you discuss that off the air. But but that sort of spirals into the immigration path through Quebec. That, as you mentioned, is proven that only 5% stay in the province of Quebec.
Yeah, we have a horrible circumstance, which the government has said that they're not going to touch, right? And the Conservatives were looking at touching, is because it's picking a fight with Quebec. Is Quebec has a program in which they get money from wealthy immigrants, the majority of them coming from mainland China, that are supposed to intend to remain in Quebec. They don't remain in Quebec, and they track this by where people get their when they apply for public health care, where they're getting their sort of MSP cards, right? Mm-hmm. And what they're finding is over 95% of those applicants are actually going to a province outside of Quebec. But Quebec not only gets the investment money, Quebec also gets money for each immigrant that intends to settle in that province. So they get these settlement funds to help these people resettle. So there's language services.
So the feds are kicking in
money for these people to go to Quebec.
Right.
Quebec's getting the investment money where they qualify, and those people are coming over to BC. BC doesn't get the money to train them in English if they need English training.
So how much money are we talking here to get in through that pathway?
Each one, they have to lend the government $800,000. They have to lend the Quebec government $800,000.
And they get it back?
And they get it back at 5 years.
Okay. All right. Now, there's one last point I want to get to before we run out of time. Another issue that's come up with this new paper, this sort of working document, indeterminate to 1 year working permit. Is that explain what that means and how it
the bonus points in the express entry pool depended upon you having a permanent offer of employment. Yeah. Supported by LMIA, but a permanent offer of employment.
So that means full-time work, yeah.
Well, full-time and forever.
Right.
Well, they don't say forever. They say indeterminate.
Right.
All right. The intention, all things considered, is that this is a permanent job. But they're going to change that. Well, they're suggesting changing that from indeterminate to a minimum of 1 year. And so even short-term jobs, the offer of employment would give you the points. It's an interesting idea. It would certainly open up the numbers. I'm not sure why you would do it, though.
Would it be for big mega projects like maybe the liquid natural gas Kitimat projects, things like to get, workers here? Things like that?
I think what you had is a lot of employers felt very uncomfortable offering somebody an indeterminate job. And I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding what that means. It doesn't mean employers are often concerned, well, am I committed to keep this person employed forever?
Sure.
No, you're not, actually. If you have a reason to fire them, you can fire them. If you run out of work for them, you can let them go. But at the time when they're coming to Canada, the idea is that you're hiring them permanently, not for a 1-year contract, because the whole idea, part of it is we're letting you into this country permanently with the idea that you can find that you have worked this for a long time period. So, I mean, to me, I'm a little, they're sort of giving in to employers on this, that they're saying, well, we want you temporary. We don't want to make a commitment to you for a long time, but we want you to help this person get permanent residency. Then why not just get them temporary residency? Right? Give them the TRP, give them the work permit to go for a year. If you don't need them for a full year, you can't see that far ahead.
All right. Any last thoughts, Gordon, before we wrap it up today?
Yeah. The express entry system needed fixing. And I like the idea of trying different approaches to try and push and prod different categories of people into selection and reduce others. I think the system needs to be complex like that to get the right mix. So I think they're on the right track. It'll, every year they're going to do pushing and prodding.
And how quickly do these things typically happen when they decide to make changes?
Oh, when they decide to make a change, it happens instantly. They only need to issue minister's instructions. It takes no time.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on this? If they're floating this balloon now, do you think it'll be coming in the next 12 months?
Oh, yeah. It'll be before the end of this year.
Yeah. I agree with. I think it's going to happen fairly quickly.
Well, it's good for you guys. It keeps you busy at MKS Law in downtown Vancouver.
It's good for Canada if we're addressing these problems. That's
all right. Gordon Maynard and Rudy Kischer from MKS Law, partners in MKS in downtown Vancouver. Their new location right near the Burks Building at
688 Hastings.
On Hastings and Granville. Thanks for your time. It's always great having you. We're going to have you back soon talking about immigration law. Always fascinating. Thanks for listening. This is The Law Show. I'm Zach Spencer on CL 650.